Hello.
Charlie.
Miss Charlie,
Hi. It's good to see you.
you as well. How are you?
Good. I'm so good. That's so nice to be here.
Good. Are you
Yeah, I
home?
knew.
I'm home. Yeah.
Good.
Snowed in?
Not snowed in, but we have some snow. It's beautiful, but it's too cold. A little too cold.
Yeah, where are you at? West Virginia? Is that what it is?
Northern Kentucky. Not too
Oh,
far.
I mean, Southern Ohio, Northern Kentucky, West Virginia. What's the difference, right?
East side of the
What's the
Mississippi. You're close.
I'm from Ohio, so I can say that.
Yes, right. Well, it's a difference between a Bengals fan and others.
That's
So
true. That's
So
true.
you have snow in Kentucky right now?
we do. We had a snow day yesterday. Yeah, there was a lot.
Wow. Yeah, my
Yeah.
parents live just south of Chicago, and they said they got dumped, but they typically get lake effect.
Yes. Well, and yeah, my husband's from Buffalo, and I used to live in Canada, so I know all about that stuff. It's, yeah.
You probably
Lake Erie.
also know that there is no such thing as a snow day unless you live somewhat in the South.
Correct. Correct. I used to tell my kids, because now they're like accustomed to Kentucky, but they used to walk to their school in snow pants every day in the winter. Like they just had to go.
Yeah.
There was no snow day.
The school I was at previously, and it's not too much different than the school district I'm in now, had their first snow day ever. And it was only because we are on day 5 of negative 30-degree temperatures. And they just felt like maybe we should stay home today.
That's
So,
yeah. That's good.
anyways.
It's nice to have you back on the show. It's always a pleasure to see you and your work and to talk with you. And I'm going to try to be generous and kind in this conversation because I know Brian will probably try to push some buttons, so which is what he's known for. Here's why I wanted to have this conversation with you today, which is I've been thinking about this a lot as we've been trying to figure out how to support students in their behaviors, in their social connections, in their anxiety, which is what about the world that we're living in currently is putting so much pressure on students and causing so much anxiety. And I've come up with a list, reward systems that we have, constant endorphins, screen changing, just a general feel of society. But I wonder if now that you've been out in schools quite a bit, what is your feeling? What is causing this anxiety that students are feeling right now?
Yeah. Definitely social media is a part of it. But let's get back to the basics of it. These kids don't have the skills, the tools, the language to communicate with us adults the same way we communicate with each other. And by the way, the adults surrounding them are really stressing out today. They're really stressed. And so there's so much about like the growth of anxiety as it changes. They're still just kids and they don't know how to feel about themselves. They don't know how to see themselves. They're still trying to figure things out with their peers. They feel definitely more isolated, alone in today's world. And we're having a lot of expectations, but we adults aren't equipped to properly respond typically. So, I mean, that's so general. It's really a case by case too. Like, let's think about it, how old these kids are. They're growing, they're learning, they're trying to navigate their way through this world where there's constant feedback online about the likes, or there's constant news, there's constant exposure. Definitely that stuff is different. But here's the other thing is they're disconnected from other generations who didn't experience it the same way. So they really don't have that in common at all. So there's just all these internal expectations, these external expectations, criticisms, and they're still trying to just grow and learn to be an adult in this world.
I just want to dig in slightly more. So are we sure that kids are more anxious rather than we're just naming that feeling more often?
Well, let me just address that, because just because we're talking about it doesn't mean we are creating more anxiousness. Just like when we talk suicide doesn't mean we're making people want to attempt suicide, complete suicide. So just by talking about it just means it gives space for them to understand what their feelings are and what's going on. It's not just about feelings. It's like, this is my life experience. But to go back and answer your question, Kasey, I've seen that there has been an increase. There was an increase when the smartphone was invented. So we have seen an increase in anxiety among kids, especially. Adults in leadership roles there's increasing anxiety there too. And also COVID, it absolutely created more anxiousness. It just did. And now kids are trying to navigate a system that's outdated. And so are
Hmm,
teachers. And
hmm.
teachers aren't prepared to be teachers in today's society. So there's a lot going on. There's just not a lot of preparation. And we had to just be thrown into these two major life circumstances and not really know what to do about it. So I know there's more there, but is there something else you wanted to ask about that, Kasey or Brian?
No, I we've had this conversation about where schools currently are and whether or not we're just if the problem is real is really what I was getting at. And I think I agree with you, which is we are seeing an increase in anxiety. It's not just that we named it. It actually exists. It's real. It's worse. And Brian, what was your question?
Well, it's on that topic, and the question came to mind, and then Charlie, I wonder if you almost kind of already answered it. But you had mentioned that adults are also more anxious now. And I was going to ask, well, why is that? Because the way in which at least the initial description was going is it sounds probably something that's cyclical, generation after generation. That the parents are now stressed and they're dealing with adolescence. But then you mentioned something like, and I think this is true. I'm sure it's true throughout all of history, but it seems more prominent now, which is parents are being asked to parent a generation that they have no basis of understanding. Like there's things going on with adolescence that we never had. One of my teachers this morning said she wishes she was teaching back in her early stages of the 90s and early 2000s because there was more of a connection of understanding um, between parents and teachers. And as so, I guess that's my question, and is that the simple answer, which is parents are feeling more stressed now because that gap of misunderstanding has been exacerbated due to the rise of social media and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to have a blanket statement because it's so complex. It really does depend on so many circumstances. And one family may be addressing it really well, and another family may be judgmental of how that family is dealing with, the polarization or the gaps in understanding. It's it's really about we just are in such a rapidly changing society. We all grew up with the internet, and since then everything has just changed in the way we are exposed to things. And so what's interesting about the brain is that you can be exposed to something, see something and then interpret it in a certain way, and it may seem just as traumatic as if you went through it. Like, there's so much that we've been learning about the brain that way. So that's why you're seeing more exposure. I mean, I'm really cautious about what my kids look at because I'm like, just close your eyes for a minute.
Yeah.
Because if you see that, you can't unsee that. And I don't know what you're going to do with that. And then also that I think, gosh, am I protecting them too much? Because my goodness, I was exposed to a lot. But then, so it's difficult. And what we're missing, what we're lacking is that long-term data. We don't have
Yeah.
all that we need either. I mean, we are seeing more data, and I'd love to dive into that even more someday is the research. I really want to see what has happened with the brain. I really want to know long-term. And then we've got AI. I mean, oh my gosh, you guys, AI. Look at what we're doing with AI now that we weren't even
Yeah.
doing a year ago.
I think that's what's most terrifying is to realize that myself, but mostly my children, are the current test subjects. I
They
hate that.
are. They are. They're guinea pigs. We were with the internet though too. And
Yeah,
and our parents were with other things and the TV and the political
sure.
climate and the social climate. So here's the thing, you all. It's about this is what I used to teach about is social change, like the challenge of change in society. This is what I loved teaching about because the different systems of the world, depending on where you live, depending on your belief system, depending on acceptance, depending on the polarization that a community has or a society has. I mean, you're raising kids in one of those societies. And so if you live in a society where everybody has the same beliefs and the same practices, that's easy because you know exactly what's expected of you. But the minute you become an adolescent and start questioning your identity and start questioning the adults around you, then you start wondering if it's okay. And then you feel critical about yourself and all of these things. Now, imagine if you're getting all of that way earlier because you've got a cell phone in your hand or you've got the internet in your face and you're exposed to a lot more. And now you're able to shift your thinking. And now you've got these groups, these forums of people who are backing you way earlier. There's just so much going on.
So, Charlie, I believe deeply in the work that you're doing, but I also know to your point, what you said a second ago, there's an increasing amount of conversation saying that the problem is that we've pampered the kids too much, that we've coddled them too much, and that's what's causing the anxiety. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. I would say we are talking about it. And I think that's a good thing, but we've talked about it in such a way that we didn't really address it properly. So we swung the other way. I would agree with that. What people forget is that I was a teacher in the midst of all this change too. And I remember feeling stressed and strained and like, why am I not supported? Why does this kid get to act this way to me? And then get away with it. So what has happened is we did start talking about it. We did start learning about the brain and mental illness and start talking more about it. And the world expanding. I mean, they just exploded with this conversation. But what we didn't do is we didn't teach kids how to effectively talk about it in ways that adults want to hear it or
Hmm,
ways that adults can receive it without being irritated,
hmm.
annoyed.
Oh,
Okay. That's
man,
what's
that's the first time
happened.
I've ever heard that, and I really appreciate that. That was good. And Charlie, you've also said this is in one of our previous conversations with you, um, and I have shared it with on this podcast and with my staff and people who have the boredom enough to listen to me. Uh, which you said something earlier on of emphasizing social emotional health, and we're teaching it so much to our students, forgetting that the people who are teaching it, the teachers, never went through it. They never had the training. So suddenly, as adults, they're trying to teach this thing that we're saying highly impacts your ability to learn and to cope and to make decisions. And our teachers, ourselves, myself, are like, I'm learning it as I'm going through it, and I haven't even figured it out yet. And so now I'm asked to use this language and to have this empathy, and I haven't figured it out yet. And I think that's a component to this that is, I think, frustrating to teachers and educators. If you're an English teacher, a science teacher, history teacher, you went through the training, you loved it, you kind of went through the process of going to classrooms and teaching it, and now we're adding on this entirely new curriculum and we don't even know anything about it. I believe you're the one who said that. Can you want to say more about that really quick before I really push in and ask some hard questions?
Please do, please do. Yeah, and I remember that conversation. It was about we this whole idea of SEL. First of all, I never used the words S or
You
the
never do.
acronym SEL. I didn't.
Never.
5 years ago, it was I kind of learned more about it as I moved back to the States, and it was everywhere. And I thought, oh yeah, because I was looking at more of the practical stuff going on. And here's what I kept thinking about the system because I've been thinking about this for a very long time while I was in it, while I was still in it. And so I said, you know what? Here's what we've got wrong. Like we're pushing SEL skills. We're pushing these skills that we're saying kids need. We're, we're putting it on them. We're learning in these environments. We're doing advisory classes. We're doing these social skills groups and all of that. And then we're not teaching the adults that. And so we're teaching these to kids, and then we're throwing them right back to the same environments with stressed out parents and burned out teachers. And we're expecting those kids to function well. And those adults have grown up in a system that was completely different. The thinking around it was completely different. It was very authoritative. Well, very authoritarian, I should say. It's I'm the teacher, therefore you have to respect me, whether I'm a jerk or not, whether I treat you with respect or not. I'm the teacher. You have to pay attention to me all the time, which is who's really doing that. And you also have to be kind to me or you're out. You're out. And so we grew up that way. So we can't expect teachers to automatically go through a teacher program and just learn theory or learn how to create a lesson plan and deliver content. That's what they were taught. And so now all of a sudden we're shifting everything and saying, kids need to be supported. We need to view this differently. People are compassionate already in education. We just never really understood it the way that we're forcing it now. And it was a very quick push. And we're not teaching kids how to advocate and show up separate, like the same way. So we're very polarized and very separated there. So I'll give you the example that I always give, and you will know exactly what I mean. And this is where the shift happened. It's we taught about anxiety. So those kids who were really stressing with that social anxiety had a hard time doing presentations. What did we do with those kids? We said, well, then you don't have to do it. You don't have to even do it. Let me help you do something different. That is not what we had to do. We have to lean into it. We never taught them the discomfort, and we never taught them to take risk and feel okay when they did mess up, because we have also a system that is outdated. The way that we view kids who are successful, quote unquote, academically, and they're the quote unquote good kids. My goodness. So we have had that conversation, and that's shifted. The whole growth mindset's great. But we've got to look at systems of the world that are doing things really well too. Like look at Finland. Finland actually has a lot of respect for their teachers. They treat teachers as professionals, and they pay them as professionals. They are so highly regarded in their society. And what do we do here in ours? It's very different. It's very different. So our attitude even about teachers is just different. So there's just, again, it's complex. There's a lot
Sure.
going on.
Sure.
I want to follow up on what you said, because Brian was right to point out when you said that kids are speaking in a way that the adults don't understand. I've never heard anybody say that and that be the source of the conflict. But I think that's absolutely right. And I think what it is our kids are more emotionally intelligent than the adults that are leading them, in that our kids are recognizing feelings. They may not know what to do with them. And I would argue that's where the adults need to step in. But when kids are talking about the feelings that they're having and their anxiety, and the adults are going, "Oh, well, you're just soft. You've been coddled too much." I think they're having two entirely different conversations.
Well,
The kid is saying, "I feel this," and the adult should be trying to coach them through that strategy.
as we're chatting, an analogy came to mind, but I want both of you to pick it apart and tell me if it makes sense, because that sentence, and I don't think you said, I wrote down understand as well in a language adults can't understand, but I don't you think you used the word understand. What did you say? Do you remember? It was more
Um,
like tolerate.
Tolerate is at the top of my head right now. I didn't say that, but it is exactly what's happening. They're not able to tolerate. Kids are not being taught how to ask for things in a way that teachers want to hear it or adults
Yeah.
hear it.
And so I like that. So here's the analogy that kind of came to mind. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it helps this conversation. It's almost like, because we emphasize so much the language, students now have access to the language. To Kasey's point, they're more intellectually inclined to be able to name emotions and all that kind of stuff. Um, we've but we've given them then the wheel to the car and said, you know the language, now start driving. And us and the adults in the back seat are like, no, this is scary. No, what are you doing? You can't. I see the cliff of where you're heading when you're driving this way. Now, we didn't have the language to kind of navigate it, but as we've given kids now the power to steer, essentially, I think that's where my teachers, I'll speak directly to my teachers and some of the people that I rub shoulders with, are getting frustrated, where a student can say, that makes me uncomfortable. That triggers me. And because they use this language, they now steer where the next steps go. And teachers don't feel like they can ask them to do it anyway. Like, we'll support you, we'll encourage you, but I'm sorry, you still have to do this presentation. And so I think that's where I am sensing, and this is when I called you, Charlie, beforehand. I said, hey, I'd like to kind of get into some murky waters here, if you're okay with that. I'm wondering, I'm going to say intentionally drastic, but I'm wondering if we have, in our intention to give language, to teach this SEL, we have gone the other extreme, where it is now the driver to decision making, especially for youth, and we don't ask them and require kids and adults to do hard things. Just because it's uncomfortable, just because it's scary, just because you don't like it, doesn't mean we stop doing it. Do you sense that at all?
Absolutely. And again, I was in it too. I
Yeah.
remember that as well. And I remember feeling unsupported. And I remember thinking, why did the kids get to run the show? I don't get it.
Yeah.
So here's, again, a lot of my thinking and planning and research and all of the design is around the leaders, which is the leader of the classroom, was the teacher, or the leaders of school or district. And so if kids are learning how to express themselves and use this language, adults kind of feel caught. We kind of feel caught. And so it's like, okay, it's not about, I don't want the kid to know this. It's either I don't know it, I don't know it myself, and I don't know what to do about it. The whole thing about this is people don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to do with it. And what we need to learn is to adapt. I mean, that is why we are humans. That's why we've survived like we have. We learn to adapt. But people won't adapt well They will maladapt. They won't adapt in a healthy way if they don't feel secure. So that insecurity is underlying this whole thing. If I feel okay to mess up in front of you and you won't judge me, and like I will be okay to just take that risk. I'll take that leap. I'll stand in front of my peers. I'm going to do it even though I might fail. Some kids see that failure as utter despair. So, how do we do this? Well, we need to go way back again, like just this whole shift of the system. The kids who are coming to me and they do have that language that you're talking about, they do know how to talk about their feelings and all that. First of all, you're talking to a generation of people who weren't taught to talk about their darn feelings, so they're annoyed right there. So, we actually, like when I work with kids, I have them name their feeling because there's tons of evidence to show it's important for their nervous system to actually do that, to kind of tame the response that we're seeing as behaviors we hate and we're totally annoyed. But I also teach them how to use it in a space with adults because I'd say that's not how an adult's going to hear that and want to help you. They're not going to help you that way. Let me tell you how to say it, or let's talk through how you could say that differently so that you could adapt to their system too.
Which I just think I'm gonna get hung up on this because I think that there's so much wisdom in that. And it's a different conversation that I've heard anyone have with SEL because it tends to be, and one of the reasons why adults tend to be frustrated is it's like just because your feelings are hurt or your perspective is hurt, therefore you get to guide what happens next. But this is teaching at the root of it empathy. Yes, you have your feelings. Yes, you have your emotions, and you're allowed to express them, but as well as understanding the opinions and the emotions of the other person. So, in the only way I've heard it so far, Charlie, is this conversation teaches people to understand themselves, be honest with themselves, and empathetic towards the person they're talking to. And I think if we teach that to students more than anything else, that's the most important thing, that they can have a conversation with somebody and understand how they might receive the information. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's what happens.
You work with adults and you work with kids. Talk a little bit about the different challenges between those two groups.
Adults have gone through years and years of struggle where I'm getting to capture the kids before all that struggle has happened. So the adults who, especially the parents, so it's usually the parents I'm working with, not always, but the adults who have kids especially are carrying around so much guilt and like true pain about I should have, I don't know how to do this differently. I've done things in my life I regret. So there's a lot of relationship stuff that we didn't get. So like when I work with kids, I say to them, you have such an advantage of being here right now. Like it is so great that you're here learning this stuff now because you're going to save yourself years of all that pain that your parents had or that teacher that's really struggling with you. You're going to save yourself so much hassle of having to carry that around with your life. So it's proactive. One of the worst things of me stepping out of teaching is that I don't get to teach kids about healthy versus unhealthy relationships. I got to do that. And I don't get to teach them about that. And I don't get to teach them about how their brain works and all the childhood stuff that went on up to them as a teenager. This is why you're probably saying this. And this is probably why you're doing this. Now, what are you going to do differently? What are you get to do something differently? What's that going to be? I miss those conversations. So I'm trying to equip the adults to have the tolerance and the skill set to do that, because I think that's how we're going to change from the inside out of the system, within ourselves to the outside world, and from within the system out. I think that's how we're going to do this.
I want to emphasize really quick what you just said, because you do consistently, which is why we love to have you on the show. You do consistently, when you try to solve problems, speaking with children and yourself, you start with what can you control? And it's you. Because so many times when we have people, students, parents frustrated in my office, they want to change the system around them. If you guys change, then my child can change. But you constantly say, change you first and then work on the things around you. And I just want to applaud that, because that's not a very attractive perspective in education right now. Typically it is pointing the fingers around. You guys are the problem. You're the reason why I'm reacting the way that I am, because I'm being bullied, because this teacher doesn't like me. And there's which probably all of that might be true. However,
Right. Right.
what can you control? And you do a good job of always pointing to the center.
Charlie, you've talked for a long time about and written books about behavior being a form of communication, and you sit here talking about the keys to all of this work is improved communication. What are some of the mistakes either the kids or the adults make in their communication, and what are some of the strategies you're using or teaching to overcome that?
Yeah. First of all, we really aren't hearing. I mean, this is not new either. I mean, think of the breakdown in communication. We're asking questions and then not leaving time for the person to think about it and process it to answer. And then we're also not really following up to that. Right. And so it goes back to ego. There's usually three barriers in life to getting to do anything that you want. That's time, that's funding or money, and it's ego. And so I've had my ego in check several times in my life. The biggest is when I became a mom for the first time. And boy, when you have to step outside of yourself for another human being, that is powerful. And so that moment, I promised him, I remember a moment laying down like pregnant right before I had him. And I remember looking around his nursery and just saying like, I promise I will protect you. And so I had to step outside myself. When I had him, that was clarity for me. So then all the times in life where I didn't, guess how it made me feel? Terrible, devastated. So how many people are walking around our system who have true purpose in helping our kids do well in school, and what their vision of that is and how it's not really matching how they're showing up. For one kid, it might be feel really good, but then my teacher doesn't see me as being this good kid. But I feel like I'm a good kid. Why don't they think that about me? And so we're walking around with a lot of adults who have already formed these opinions and these expectations. And when kids don't meet those, then wow, they feel immediately judged, and they are. Judgment is okay,
Hmm,
actually.
hmm,
Unfair judgment is not.
hmm. You're reminding me of a conversation we had about shame a couple episodes back that I thought was really powerful. Um, here's my follow up question to you. This concept of ego, I love that breakdown of time, money, and ego. I think that's probably very accurate. If I have a parent in my office who's frustrated, I can't do anything about their time, and I can't do anything about their money. What I can, in some ways, interact with is their ego. And what I mean by that is, you had this moment where you talk to yourself about, I'm going to protect you. I think all moms are somewhat born with that. And many moms have that moment of, I'm going to protect you. And so we had a very frustrated parent in our office the other day, and he came in. I mean, he even acknowledged at the very end, he came in guns a-blazing, didn't fully understand the context. He apologized at the end for doing so, but he said, I've had some experiences with my son in schools, and so I come in guns a-blazing. And my assistant principal and I said, I'd much rather a passionate father come in here than an absentee father. So you're okay. Like, we're okay. So thank you for that. Now, when a parent comes in, my question is, how do I, and the words that came to mind is break down or break through, but I don't love that because it has like some volatile connotations. So how can you help me sidestep or get through the ego problem of a parent in my office or a parent in my classroom? Because in some ways we are helping a child form their ego, and so it's not nearly as it's still formidable. Parents, they're pretty solid in their ego. How can we break that down or get through that ego? How can we solve the ego problem?
Can I ask that same question in a slightly different way? And
If
Sure.
it's going to
not,
be better than the way I said it, I don't want to hear it.
it's not better. It's just the way I was thinking about it. And actually, the way I'm saying it might be wrong. My thought was, how do we protect their ego? And that's really stemming from something we've talked about quite a bit, which is children, adolescents, they want their status protected, but we also still need to help them change. So that's why that's what question came to
Well,
mind was,
okay,
how do we protect the
before you
ego?
answer this,
But that might
Charlie,
not be right.
no, well, before she answers this, I want to kind of battle that a little bit, because here's why I appreciate what you're saying, and I think that there's truth to that. We're always protecting people's ego. That's how you can build trust and you can build empathy and all that kind of stuff. It's also the times, and this is maybe the harshness I'm going to say intentionally to try and get some clarity that goes back to my earlier questions with Charlie. I don't care about the ego. If your ego is getting in the way of us doing the right thing, whether it be a teacher or a student or a parent, um, I don't want to massage it if your ego is causing destruction. I don't want to protect your ego. I actually want to break it down because your ego is causing harm. And I know that's a harsh way to say it, but maybe internally that's how I'm feeling at times of this desire or this need to protect your ego is getting in the way of solving the problem. Does that make sense?
All right, Charlie, you got to pick a side now.
Yeah, I'm going to say the question originally, Brian, is how do I break their ego down? Is that the gist? Can we say the gist and protect it, Kasey? Can we
Yeah,
say
yes.
break it
I
down
don't
and
like the
protect
way
it?
breaking down because it has this connotation of destruction, but it's get through it. How do I get through the ego? Maybe is the better way to say it.
Here's my very simple answer. You won't. That's their work
I don't
to
like that
do, not
answer at all.
yours. I know. I know. It- that's their work to do, not yours.
Yeah,
I think what we need then is help understanding how that frees us to do the work if we just
correct.
set that aside, because I'm having a hard time doing that. So help us through that process then.
Okay. So parents get very reasonable when you're looking out for their kid.
Correct.
That's why they showed up. So no matter what, if you look at them like a nervous system, if you put everything aside, you're like, what is their nervous system looking like right now if I uncovered it all up? Or if I uncovered it all? And it would probably be heightened. And then if you tried to figure out all the stuff coming up from that, like you won't figure all that stuff up. But if you know that if they're in your office to talk about their kid, their ego is either protective of their kid because they really believe in their kid and they think they're getting a raw deal, or I would argue it's probably more about them because it's a reflection of them and all the things that are unprocessed in their life. And you're not uncovering it in that office. So if we can address it with that empathetic approach, I tried, by the way, I tried really hard not to use those buzzwords because that breaks down a lot of teacher talks here. So I try not to say trauma too much or, all these things. But if you look at the parent like you really do genuinely care about the kid, their child, and about how they're going to move through your system in a respected way, like where they feel valued, their kid feels valued, their kid is getting the experience that's going to help them become the best they can, or at least they believe that. This goes back to a belief system too. If you can soften your voice, if you can approach them like this, then you are already calming the space that they're engaging in. So that is an effective communication approach. If they're trying to raise up and you stay down here, the real power is down here. So that is very basic communication. The other thing that we've got to do is keep the language very simple. Keep it simple and let them say what they've got to say. Give it time. If you notice the parent is, because you got to protect time too and give that space for time, but then not too much space. Then you can say, okay, well, I've seen on the clock, we've got 7 minutes. What is it that you need me to know so that I can help your kid succeed? Or whatever the conversation is. What are we missing? So I try to just listen to what that underlying thing is that they're coming in for. Is it about them or is it about the kid? So I simplify it, about them or their kid. And then I say, what does your kid really need right now? Or the question then becomes, what is it that you need right now? And when they try to bring up a long history, I say, right now, that history is not helping us move forward. What do we need in this moment now? Trying those simplified approaches.
I have tried to remind myself and teach my staff that when parents come in frustrated, oftentimes they're coming in, the underlying emotion is fear. Fear that, if it's a very difficult kid, this is not the first conversation they've had. And they are fearful that if they can't fix them and we can't fix them, what then? So they're terrified of the what then. They're
That's right.
terrified of the judgment, right? Like, this is your child. What are you doing at home that allows this child to be this way, right? So there's undercurrent of fear of, most of the time, I think it is either fear of judgment on them as a parent, but it's also, if you the professionals can't figure out my kid, what hope do they have? Um, and I don't, it doesn't make it right, but it can give you that empathetic spirit to it. But again, I think I think I'm still kind of hung up on this, and so I want to kind of maybe come back to it because, and maybe the simple answer is, you can do the best you can, and Charlie, you're absolutely right. You know, you can't change their ego. But when the ego, and I'm willing to say that sometimes it's mine, but I don't want to focus on me. I want to focus on somebody else. When their ego is not allowing us to move forward in a productive, purposeful way, maybe give me some language for that. Whether it be a language of shutting it down and just saying, well, then we're kind of at a standstill because in my building, this is what has to happen to keep kids and staff safe. Or what is something that we can do, and I'm going to use this word intentionally, to manipulate the conversation where they think I'm massaging their ego, but really what I'm doing is getting what I want, which is to get them on my side to change this behavior.
Yeah. I think you can't ever do that because they'll see through it, and we never want to come across that way. But you also just be forthright because you've got to let them handle the truth and the fact. You're not responsible for that. If you're leading the system and that is the goal, like it depends on the goal, right? But if your goal is, I really appreciate your kid and I understand why he's doing this, but also he can't do this in this space. We have 30 kids we have to keep safe and a teacher in front of them. We have to keep them safe. So if he keeps doing this, it can't happen. So these are the things we suggest and we will work with you on that, but this can't happen. So this is what has to happen next. So it depends on what that is, right? Um, and sometimes you can't do things that you want to do within the system. So again, it does depend. And sometimes the traditional system does not support our kids, especially the neurodivergent kids. We have 1 in 7 people in the world who are neurodivergent. We have 1 in 5 in our schools who are neurodivergent in our public schools. And that means there are that many more kids who are lacking focus, who need movement, who are frustrated by sound, and they're not with you anyway. And so if we are not going to adapt the system, because you're right, it's not changing quickly enough, how can we support the kid in the system? So when you can't reach the parent, go back to the kid. You can give the parent or the guardian the parameters in the space. You're like, this is how it has to be. You can accept it or not. You can accept it or not. I say the language you use when you're trying to get through someone and they're not going to grab onto it. Just repeat it. Be calm. Repeat it. Okay. My next meeting is here. I need to go. We can follow up in a day or two when we've thought a little bit more through. And I'd love to hear what you have to say at that point. Right now, we're done. This needs to wrap up. And I want you to think about this, and I'm going to think about this. And I'll call you in a day or two or whatever. So we can give them something so they know they're not forgotten. Give them something to do in the meantime, too, and let them know clear that you've got
And
to
we're
go.
not shifting our expectations.
You can't always do that in a system. That's why teachers are so frustrated. They just don't know what to do. They think that the answer is that, oh, I just have to give in to the kid. That's not true. We actually can't. We have to actually lead and guide the kid. Kasey, you said earlier about coaching. Teachers were never taught to coach. Teachers were taught to teach curriculum and lessons. And they've been getting a little bit more. Yeah.
You don't need to be the therapist. You're the teacher. Good. Those behaviors, push them on to those people who know how to do it. You teach the content.
So that leads to a couple of questions. One is, how do we offer that empathetic support, but also hold people accountable? And then after you've had a second to answer that, I want to talk a little bit about some of your the tools that you offer and how we put that into our classrooms without it feeling kind of out of place or hokey. But let's focus on that first part. How do we be empathetic and hold people accountable?
Well, I think we show up genuinely, and I think we are just very candid about it, but in a compassionate way. So if you show up genuinely and you truly have compassion, which most of our educators do and our leaders do, then you don't have to think too much about all the other things you have to do. That's what's so difficult is like active listening is absolutely great, but how many things do you have to think about when you're showing up? Like, oh my gosh, what's my posture? What's my tone? What's all that? Just show up genuinely trying to understand what's going on underneath to see how you can be supportive. And also remember, we are not in charge of people's feelings and actions, but we can help them navigate a system that has them have to act a certain way. So let's go back to this. Brian, you were saying something earlier about in a classroom, I can't really recall it, but it was about like they get to act this way and then we don't we don't hold them accountable, but we have to. So it's got to be really clear. So it goes back to communication, it goes back to showing up genuinely, Te absolutely equipping teachers with it's a new way of teaching. It's a different world of teaching. It's not the same as 20, 30 years ago. So we've got to give them not only the understanding, we have so much more knowledge of what's going on in the brain and the body and the nervous system. So we've got to notice, we've got to teach them to notice the shift before it happens. We've got to notice ourselves and how we show up. That's why I think a lot of this work, you guys, is about going back and helping our own nervous systems not get so elevated in the space of these kids. Because it just takes one kid to elevate us in front of the whole class. And then we think everything is out of control and chaotic when it's actually not. So showing up genuinely to a conversation to really just try to get like, what are we doing here? Is this working? If it's not, what else can we do? Let's try this and see if this works. It may not. And by the way, I'm not an expert. I'm never going to call myself an expert. And maybe you're not an expert. Maybe we can figure out what our culture's like and see what else might be working. What else could we try? And I bet you if you listen to teachers, if you listen to their suggestions, and don't let it be a bitch fest. Like we've got to manage that too. Listen to what they really need and their suggestions and say, oh, I never really thought about it like that. Tell me more about that and how you see that playing out. And then you can say, that's a great idea, maybe, but it's probably not going to work here because of what expectations I have as a leader in this building, in this district. That's what's a lot of times there's just so many lies, you guys. There's so many lies that we're telling ourselves. We don't stop to process it. And that's why we've got to have space and time to actually talk this stuff through to really get down to what's actually happening.
So thank you for that. My other question then was, one thing I've appreciated about you from the start is you do avoid those buzzwords because they get devalued. But we find ourselves in this situation where we genuinely need some strategies to get through our anxieties, our feelings. As humans, we need them all of the time, including in the classroom. But when we start to have that conversation with the adults, it starts to feel a little hokey, a little strange. I'm not going to set up a mindfulness corner. There's some pushback. So talk a little bit about some of the simple strategies that you think are easiest to incorporate and make a lot of sense in the classroom and they don't feel out of place.
Yeah, absolutely be more playful and move. Be more playful and move. I teach rapid resets all the time on my social media. I've been told, you just got to go and do those darn rapid resets because they're so simple and they shift the whole energy of the room. And that's the power that teachers actually have that they didn't think they did. So if you have a kid, that kid's getting squirrely, And so you don't call that kid out anymore because guess what? That gets you all revved up. But instead, be like, hey, to the whole class, we're going to do a rapid reset. We're going to do time. You don't look at that kid. You look at the whole class and you're like, oh, okay. All right, guys, we're going to do the finger thumb switch. Let's go. Let's go. Come on. I know you can do it. I know you got this. You look great. I see you do. Right. Just silly. You can change the energy of the room and be playful. And if we understand that we're just spewing and stress all the time, but we can shift out of that, we are going to have a better experience. And we're going to carry that positive, excitement or that playfulness home with us. And waiting in line, life doesn't have to be doom and gloom. I know. I've been through those moments of having to change it. I've been there. That's why I'm here, because I know it can change. So the rapid resets, being more playful, not taking things so seriously. Oh my gosh, my best, I don't know, 7-second clip on TikTok or something is that I said about kids rolling their eyes at you. I'm like, with some of these things these kids are going through, their eye rolls, who cares? Who cares if they roll their eyes? We take things so personally and so deep. It's because we haven't had the opportunity to feel okay about ourselves. So everything that's going on around, we feel like we're failing ourselves. We feel like we have no control. We feel defeated all the time. Let's lighten up. Let's be playful. Let's laugh with our kids. Let's laugh with our colleagues. Guys, anybody who's lost someone close to them, I lost my best friend to cancer. 2015, I had to teach a whole new school year with little ninth grade faces coming in 3 days later. That woke me up. Let's just have a good time here, you guys. What are we doing? What are we doing? Sometimes we just got to be in check. So, movement is the biggest thing that I can see in public education that would benefit not only kids, but ourselves. That's the first thing I do.
Can I add a little something to that that I read the other day that kind of made me chuckle? Kasey says quite consistently, "Don't take yourself too seriously," and I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying, Charlie. It's like relax, have some fun, don't take the eye roll too seriously. But it was a little like 4 line thought that it just had me chuckling. But it says this: there are 4 things that amaze me or that are mysterious to understand. The way an eagle the way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a snake on a rock, the way of a ship on a sea, and the way of adolescent behavior. And I just love that like little quip of like, guys, we're working with kids. Don't take it too seriously. They don't have a freaking clue what they're doing half the time. They don't have the intentions behind their actions that we interpret almost all the time. They're mysterious and just roll with it and don't take it so seriously.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When I was teaching those little ninth graders, are you kidding me? Ninth grade boys at the end of the day, they need to get up and they're like bros. So they just like hit on each other, like knock into each other, right?
Sure.
So the whole back of my class, I just allowed that. They needed it. And it was playful. And I know people who walk by my classroom are like, what is Mrs. Peck
Classroom
doing there?
management, she needs it.
And I didn't care. I didn't
Yeah.
care. And they wanted to be in that darn space because I didn't think about it too
Yeah.
hard.
They were safe.
But
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, I have some questions for you as we reach the final couple minutes here. Um, you, Charlie, do a fantastic job of thinking about this all the time, and you bring it out into the world. And you are a fantastic presenter, writer. You have a book out. You have all the things. This is your expertise. I gotta believe, though, that you put something in writing or you say something in a keynote and somebody challenges it or somebody adds to it and it begins to have your brain kind of working. So, in the last month or so, what is something that you have believed to be true that you've had to start thinking, I don't know if that's fully true?
That kids are just trying to get at me. Like, if I hear a teacher or a parent say that, my kid is just trying to get at me. I don't believe that to be true. I believe that there's just a need not being met or that they really don't know how else to say it, that I need something over here. I need to feel important. It's usually about that, and tell me all the time, "I'm really trying to do a good job. I'm really trying to pay attention. I'm really trying to get my work done. I'm not trying to be bad, but I know they think I'm bad." That's what I think we're getting wrong because it
Hmm.
doesn't feel very good. I know it doesn't feel good.
Hmm. I really like that. I think we hold that truth pretty strongly. They just want to be a pain in the butt. And the reality is, I don't know if they truly want to be.
Yeah, I
So,
know they don't. I know they'd rather not.
yeah,
They know they are. They know they're appearing that way, but they'd rather not be like that.
yeah. No, that's really good. Kasey, any last minute thoughts here before we do our takeaways? All right, then. Um, well, you've been through this process, Charlie. So you know how this wraps up. We will both do our takeaways, and then if there's the last parting words that you have for us, we would appreciate that. But Kasey, what's a takeaway for today?
I mean, first of all, that speaks to my heart of being playful. I think more accurately, what I would say is take the job seriously, but not the content, because the job of teaching children is one that deserves all of our energy, but we can't take the content so seriously. You should have fun and be playful. Um, but I don't want to just take one of the last things you said. So, also a little bit earlier, you talked a little bit about whatever our emotion is really defines how the day went. And so, if we're feeling out of control, the day feels like chaos, even if it actually wasn't. And I think there's a ton of truth in our emotion dictating our perception of the reality.
Yeah, I like that. You had a couple things that stuck out. I really did appreciate the time, money, and ego as being the boundaries to maybe being successful or achieving what we want to get done. Um, but I'm going to go back to, and I don't really necessarily know how to do this in a building, but I appreciated that perspective of teaching students now that you have the language of SEL. How can you use it in a way that reaches your audience, which typically is the adults, in a way that they don't get turned off or frustrated by what you're saying? Um, I don't entirely know how to do that yet, but I appreciate that perspective. And even with adults of encouraging them, like how they're saying it is frustrating you, not what they're saying. So what are they saying that is true? Get rid of how they've said it or the words that they've chosen to use. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Any last parting words from you, Charlie?
Yeah, I always bring this back to the teacher or the adult. And I really do want them to know that there is hope and just notice your patterns. So if you are trying to like notice that you're saying something negative and you're trying to utilize a skill or something that's not working, understand you're carrying a lot with you. You're carrying a lot. And so give yourself some grace there. And there's some really great treatment we have to help. It's really a nervous system issue. Help tame your nervous system. We've got great things that we're doing these days. So just get it so that you have a better level of tolerance so you can just enjoy your life.
And if a teacher, parent, school leader wants to get a hold of you, how can they best get a hold of you?
They can go to thrivingeducator.org. All my stuff is there. Or they can go on social media, Instagram, TikTok. I'm there at Charle Peck. They want to connect there too.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate your time so very much. I think this is our fourth time hanging out with you on the Shirts and Ties.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you're a regular, and we thoroughly appreciate your company. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks, Charlie.
guys. Thank you.
We'll see you.